Well, my beginnings in the antique business was sort of somewhat forced upon me when I was 10, and my father said it was about time I earned a living, which was the way it was in Manchester, I think, in those days. And the only thing I could think of to do was to start dealing, because I'd always been a collector. I had a passion from being a very young child to collect anything, stones, butterflies, anything. So I went out and started buying things from junk shops, and probably by the time I was 12, I was well known on a Saturday afternoon with my push bike, but reselling the things that I bought at jumble sales around Manchester. I would say that to compare dealing and collecting, dealing is the necessity. The collecting part is the pleasure, and that's, I think, reflected in the things that we're now going to sell through the auction, that they've given me immense pleasure for many, many years. And so I hope that somebody else will enjoy them and cherish them the way that we have. People have, or other dealers have always asked me why I'm not a specialist, because I've done top London fairs and so forth. But if I had a problem, it's the sense that I love all art. I think that something that is prehistoric or ancient Roman or any other period can compare with something that is contemporary. It's the quality and it's the essence of the art that is important. Looking back, I opened my shop in May 1975. So it's symbolic that it's literally 50 years to the day that Saunders will sell this collection. But I've been incredibly fortunate. I entered the golden era of antique dealing when every television program was about antiques. Lovejoy was a dealer on television. I had the same Volvo with the same roof rack. I even, not deliberately, had the same leather jacket and the same long hair. So that was my nickname for many years. Yeah, one of the great joys of my 50 years in the trade is the characters that I've known, royalty, celebrities, and that was the nature of the business, because it was a merger for many years almost between celebrity and antiques, and many dealers became celebrities. As I said earlier, we've had many interesting calls, but none more interesting than from a gentleman who was called Julian Moulton. And I knew that the name sounded familiar, but I couldn't recall where. And when I arrived at his house, which on the other side of the island, and saw the mini moke outside and the champagne corks hanging off the gate, then I remembered who he was. And he was a great character of the 60s. He was a friend of the Beatles and all the Rolling Stones and everybody, and he was an aristocrat, because pop music and the aristocracy mixed very easily in those days. And he was always in the gossip columns and so on. So I went into this charming house. It was greeted by 3 wonderful taxidermied fish, and we got on instantly, and I was obviously trying to buy them, and he said no, they're not for sale. Well, fast forward a few years, and I walked in one day, mainly just socially, and he said, do you want to buy the fish? I said, well, yeah, I would. I'd love to buy them, but he said, well, we call them Bob's fish. I said, oh, why? He said, well, because I was in Montego Bay in Jamaica with Bob Marley on the boat when we caught them between us. And I was staggered as a Bob Marley fan. So having opened in Paris in 79 in the Louvre des Antiquaires in the Place de l'Opéra, I didn't speak French, I still don't, but I managed to run a gallery in Paris. Well, that was crazy, because I would drive from Matlock to Paris on a Sunday night, and that's Friday night, sorry, and then I would go and run the gallery with my French partner all day on Saturday, then put all the things we'd sold on the roof rack of the Volvo and deliver in Paris on a Saturday night. And driving an English Volvo round the Arc de Triomphe on a Saturday night with a wardrobe or a piano on the roof was quite an experience. I did a deal with a French dealer who said, get me a gun cabinet. I have a client for a very good gun cabinet, and I was in a Yorkshire auction the following week, and sure enough there was a fantastic gun cabinet. So I bought it, delivered it to his shop in the Louvre des Antiquaires, left it with him, and he didn't pay me, and it went on and on and on. And so finally one Saturday afternoon I walked through, because in those days shops were full of shoppers, especially in Paris. I walked through and this gun cabinet was still in his window, so I picked it up, I put it over my shoulder. It was about 6 foot tall, and I put it up, and he started shouting from the back of the shop, and my only response in my best French was "C'est mon cabinet." I picked it up, walked through his gallery with it on my shoulder, him screaming at me, and then threw all the way back through the Louvre and put it back in my shop. And he never even paid me then. I always was involved with the restoration of historic buildings particularly, and that culminated in the purchase of Charles Darwin's family estate in Derbyshire, which was 100 acres, a 38-bedroom mansion called Sydenham Hall, which I restored over a period of about 5 years. And since that and many other projects that came along, we actually, Vivian and I, continued when we came to Mallorca to deal in or restore historic buildings. So the two intertwine, because obviously we sell them or develop them with the interior as well, incorporating a lot of antiques and so on. In around about 1993, I discovered Buddhism. I'm never quite sure which came first, the Buddhism or the collecting of Buddhist art, because I'd always been attached to it or in admiration of it. So I became really quite serious about Buddhism and changed the direction of my life. And I always say it's like you've worn dark glasses all your life, and then one day you discover what it is, you take the dark glasses off and you never put them back. So it gave me a greater clarity about art, about decision making, about attachment and many other aspects. The reason I think that we finally decided it was time to change our life was that it's given so much satisfaction, but it's time, if I'm a true practicing Buddhist, to move on, to not be free, but to release the attachment to these things, in the knowledge that we're only custodians anyway, and it's a privilege to own these things. So now it's time to lead a simpler life, to be more reflective, to study, and just maybe live with a handful of dear things. In terms of deciding what we are going to sell, when the final decision was made, it started off, it's been a process of evolution, because each object is reflected by another one. So once one's gone, okay, well, we'll sell the next one. But I think, as you will see from the videos of the inside of the house, it's eclectic, classical, with slight elements of contemporary. For me, great art can be from any period. For most of my dealing life, I have been lucky enough to associate and deal with the Tomassos, quite legendary dealers. So I used to deal with their father back in the 70s, and now I'm close to all the three boys. I don't need to say any more about them. I think the world knows who they are. But I was there when they were really just starting the business, and they acquired a painting of a flagellant, French school, and this is in the sale, but it has the most magnificent Florentine frame, but it was dirty. It had come from a private collection, and I agreed to buy it if they would clean it, and they sent it to a top London restorer who cleaned off all the overpaint and left it in a state halfway for the final restoration, the overpaint. And when I saw it, I loved it immediately because it's so raw, and the scars on the painting are representative of the scars of the flagellant who's inflicting his own punishment. And so once the Florentine frame had been hand stripped, which took a month, I just had an object then which I think Dino would have loved to buy back, but it was too late. I wasn't letting him have it. So I've had the great pleasure of doing that for many, many years. Part of the decision to finally let go is the fact that our children are not following. They're following in the art, in the sense one is a musician and one is a budding fashion designer. But it's the usual thing for dealers' children. They grow up with it, so they don't really value it or see it. They appreciate it, but I think it's also a very difficult business for a generation that is more experience orientated. Now in my mid-70s, I don't intend to take it too easy. I think that's just a good way to get old. So we're building a Japanese garden. My hobby is stonework, building stone walls, and we recently acquired a very large building in our village, which we're going to turn into a sort of call it an Indian temple, but it's more really a focal point for meditation and for ultimately classes for people from all over the world. So the money raised by this sale will be going to a very good cause. From being a very young collector and then moving into dealing, I've always had the ability, particularly with certain sculpture, to hold it and feel the energy of the person who made it. And I think that's been one of the criteria for the selection of the objects. So now that we're about to hand it on to the next owner, I just hope that they get the same pleasure, energy, memory that we've had. So it goes with love and best wishes.